I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
But in the kingdom, we're going to have that power like the angels, but we're going to be what you call extraterrestrial. In other words, we're not going to be regular terrestrial like we are right now. Because what happened is, in the ancient world, we had that power. We had that power when we were on a level like gods. But what happened is, the Most High took that power from us. Over the generations and over the years, the Lord took that power from us. But we're going to get that back. We're going to get that power back coming into the kingdom.
I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord. But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither hath entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit.
When we think about the kingdom, most brothers think of like the small, minute terms. But the vastness of the kingdom, the greatness of the kingdom, dealing with the knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and the information alone that we're going to receive when we get to the kingdom. That's on a whole nother level. Never mind the riches and the lands and the women and the children, and to be in your chariot, sipping some yayan, on your chalice, your gold chalice with all them rubies and emeralds and sapphires and the different precious stones, going to places.
But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit.
No one, no matter how vivid a brother's imagination is, there's nothing in comparison to what's coming. You can't even imagine. You can't even paint the picture or write into words or give an explanation that even comes close to the majesty that's coming. We are destined for greatness in the new righteous kingdom.
But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit.
The brother with the most vivid imagination out there can't imagine what the kingdom of heaven has in store, what it's going to be like. What we're basing the kingdom of heaven as far as riches and having a good time and things of that nature is just based off of our experiences in this world and what we think having a good time is and living the life is. Thou wilt show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore. There are pleasures forevermore at thy right hand. So the kingdom that's coming is going to be set up and established in righteousness. The Israelites are going to be changed. Thy people shall be all righteous. Not one Israelite is going to be lost, because the promise that the Most High made to Abraham was to all that seed. And the seed of the promise went from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. Every seed that came out of Jacob is a part of the ones that are going to receive the benefits that the Most High promised to blessed Abraham.
A transfer of rulership is coming, and the kingdom of heaven will be on earth. Righteousness will be spread throughout the whole four corners of the earth. Wickedness will be put down. According to the Holy Scriptures, Yahweh Shai, the Son of the Most High, is set to bring immortality to the nation of Israel, the elect, via establishing the tabernacle of David, as we talk about the second coming of who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. He is coming to take down this current world ruled by Esau, Edom, and establish a righteous kingdom, which is synonymous with the throne of David. That's scriptural, which is a government that's going to run this world in righteousness.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders, GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessing and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out and follow to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. And what I want to get into, all right, this morning, dealing with the morning news and prophecy, all right, is the violent man, all right, which is, we know is Esau Edom, and dealing with the surveillance switch, so we'll segue into the surveillance state, how that's going to work, all right, how these devils plan on it, working, because we know the Lord, is going to intervene in the midst of the devil, attempting to establish, this control system. Okay, we know he's going to get to the point to where he's going to, merge people with his technology, via the CHIP, the MOTB, which will be, the technology, all right, mandated, to participate, in society, man. And this is why the Lord is putting us in the spirit to be ready to let everything go, as the devil, gets closer to mandating, this technology to participate in society where we know, all right, that's non-negotiable for us, So we know that this devil is going to bring in this new world order, through violence, This man plans on doing, a lot. He plans on bringing on a lot of violence, to establish this new world order. He plans to establish this new world order out of chaos and blood. And the events that we're seeing happening, when you see things like, the so-called White House shooting, when you see these mass shootings, being reported, flooding the news, when you see, so-called, domestic terrorism on the rise and extremists and all these different things, where they all play into the devil getting ready to justify the sword. So we're going to go into the scriptures, and then we got a few videos to get into. But this devil, he's to the point to where he's beyond, all right, being politically correct. And the devil is getting ready just to come with the sword, which that's his blessing. All right. Now, when you go into Genesis 27, and just to get straight to the point, this is Genesis 27 and 38. It says, and Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing? My father blessed me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. So this is him, pleading to Isaac for a blessing. It says, and Isaac, his father, answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and the dew of heaven from above. So this devil, has been given the earth, and that's why this devil has been able to influence, all right, the whole earth. The problem is he influenced it in wickedness, man. And through the perpetual sword, which uh uh he was blessed with, but the way he used it was in wickedness, man. Okay, so Esau got a blessing. You see, he was blessed with the fatness of the earth, just as Jacob was blessed with it. But Esau's blessing is temporal, and he will maintain his blessing through the sword, perpetual war. Okay, which that's wicked, man. All right, the way that he maintains his blessing is wicked, and that's why the Lord, all right, didn't bless this nigga with an eternal kingdom. Okay, because he's not built for it, because he's the wicked. Okay, now this the point. Genesis 27:4 says, "And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck." Okay, so when you go into thy sword shall thou live. Let's get this word live. Okay, when you go to the sword shalt thou live. All right, which the Hebrew word is chaya. All right, in the Hebrew chaya, and it says what? All right, to live, to have life, to remain alive. Okay, so in order for this devil to remain alive, all right, it will be through the sword. Okay, to live prosperously. How does this level live prosperously? Okay, where did his wealth come from? Well, it comes from the sword. He takes, okay, the resources, all right, of the earth. This man just goes and takes with the sword. He don't care who's on the land. Okay, what the devil does, he demonizes a people, which we're going to get into in one of these later videos, Lord willing. Okay, but the devil, he's able to demonize a people, and make them an enemy, okay, a global enemy. Then he comes in with the sword. Esau's prosperity comes from bloodshed, man. This man has a lot of blood wealth. Okay, when you go into the corporations and the resources that they own and the way that they're able to extrapolate wealth out of the earth, well, it's through the sword. All right, it says to continue in life, to remain alive, to sustain life, to live or upon. So this man lives by their sword. He does enchantments. He does economical, okay, warfare, okay, and then he finalizes everything with that sword. He establishes his agenda with that sword, man. Okay, so he's prepping that sword, all right, to go against anyone that has a problem with his new world order, okay, or has a problem with any of his agendas that he's getting ready to bring to the table, man. Anything that he's getting ready to roll out, okay, you got a problem. See, the technocracy, okay, Esau's going back to their sword. You see, for a while, America has ruled its citizens with soft power. They ruled even, certain nations, these vassals, with soft power. Okay, well, now we're seeing Esau, he's getting ready to bring their hard power back. Okay, their two horns like a lamb, that was soft power, but now he's getting ready to bring their hard power, which is their sword, man. Okay, because he's frustrated. Certain things ain't going like he wanted to go. He's dealing with certain setbacks and certain things backfiring. Okay, he's been exposed. Okay, the prophets are out. Okay, so this devil, he's operating from a position of frustration. Okay, and what he's gonna resort to is their sword, man. He's finna wild out with their sword. Okay, the scriptures say, well, he shall be like a madman sparing none. If a brother want to get that, all right. But let's get this real quick too. Okay, well, that's part of this nigga blessing. Okay, is their sword. Now let's go here real quick. Okay, because Esau reaching that point, just like the Apostle Ariamla, one person when I hear say that, how the AI gonna play a major part in that madman sparing none, and as we see this thing, unravel, we see things play out, that makes sense. You know, I got a video, that goes into it. Okay. So let's go here. When you get the book of Psalm, chapter 140. All right. It's the book of Psalm, chapter 140. Okay. In verse 1, it says of this Psalm of David said, "Deliver me, O Lord, from the evil man. Preserve my soul from the violent and chance," man. That's why there has to be a standard lifted, and ultimately Yahushua has to return. Because the level that the Lord, all right, allowed this man, to achieve on the left hand, with his weaponry, it's going to take a power from on high for us to stand a chance, man. Okay, deliver me, O Lord, from the evil man. Preserve me from the violent man. Okay, so we're constantly asking to be preserved. All right, and like I say, we're going to need a standard in Yahushua to come back. Okay, to preserve us from the violent man Esau Edom. Okay, because when you read it, says, which imagine mischiefs in their heart. Okay, so this man has a bunch of mischief in his mind. Okay, and he thinks that he's going to have his way with the prophets, man. Because the Lord got us looking like easy bait. We don't have no military. We don't have no intelligent network. We don't have the things of a standing military. Okay, we don't have the advanced weaponry, air forces. Okay, on the surface, but in the spirit we do. Okay, because the Lord is going to lift up a standard. All right, and it's going to make us surpass what this devil got, and what Yahushua coming with, it surpasses everything that this devil has, man. So on the surface, man, we look, easy for the taking, and the devil has a lot of mischief planned in his mind. Okay, but the Lord is setting a trap, just like He set a trap for Pharaoh. To Pharaoh, we looked at like we was, we were through. You had the sea. We were stuck between the sea and his army. Okay, so we looked at helpless in the time. All right, but what did the Lord do, man? A miracle. Okay, miracles it's gonna be through miracles and the power of Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai. That we are gonna overcome this devil, man. Okay, it says continually are they gathered together for war. Okay, why? Because they was going back to his blessing the sword. In order for him to survive and sustain his life, his rulership, he would have to be continually at war. Even at war with his own self, man. These devils fight over who's gonna, run the system. Okay, who's gonna run the global order? All right, they're even gonna fight with themselves, man, which is a part of their judgment. The Lord's gonna have to where they're gonna begin to judge themselves, man. Okay, as they're rolling this thing out, man. So everything is gonna work, in the favor of, all right, the hopeful elect. Everything that we see happening and playing out. Okay, like I said, these devils can fall out with one another. Go to war with each other. Okay, we're gonna these devils make their move. Okay, against the believers. Well, the Lord's gonna lift a standard. You see, and this devil mandates this MOTB. Well, that's going to open it up for this war to go nuclear, which is going to usher in what? Yahushua. Okay, so everything that we see happening, everything is working in our favor, man. We good. Okay, Psalms 140:3 says they have sharpened their tongues like a serpent. Adder's poison is under their lips. Okay, so this devil through his legislations, through his certain laws, and how does he push, certain laws and decrees through staged events? And these laws and decrees open up the door to justify the sword. Okay, to justify him being the madman sparing none. Well, he's going to cause events to happen, push certain legislation through. Okay, and justify him being the madman with the sword. Okay, and this devil gets to talking and justifying himself and bring about certain laws, man. It's just like poison of an adder, man. It's deadly. Okay, this man has, this man is going to push deadly legislation. Okay, in these last days. Psalms 144 said, "Keep me, O Lord, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from the violent man who have purpose to overthrow my goings." Okay, and we know the number one priority, man, is the prophets, man. We know that the devil, okay, has the prophets at the top of his priority, okay, because he's losing spiritually. He's being consumed spiritually by the words of the prophets through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Al-Shah, man. He wants to cut off the vessel, okay, of the Lord. Okay, he wants to cut off the mouthpiece of the Lord. And he thinks if he can silence the prophets, okay, he can go on, all right, further with his agenda. You see? But it's a trap set for the devil, man. Okay? So let's go here. Let's go to this first video I want to get. All right, because as we see these events happening, so-called assassination attempts, and we're gonna see he's gonna have to pull off something big, to move the needle like he want. Okay, now this is all right, this is the brother Anah, GMS All In 144, 2nd Ezra 1671. It said they should be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. All right, Yahweh Bashem Al-Shah. So this devil, he's gearing up to be this madman, sparing none. Okay, this the time Esau finna be on, is that madman spirit. All right, and the Lord has allowed this man to merge, AI with this weaponry. Okay, because AI is not going to win him this third world war, but it's going to cause him to do, a lot of damage to civilians, man. Okay, to usher in this new world order, because he's finna go, at least finna go to war with the American public on another level. They've been at war, through the food, through the media, through the social engineering, okay, through the chemtrails, okay, the plastics, and they've been at a covert war with the masses for a while, economically, okay, but now they're finna go into an overt war. It's gonna be open, okay, and the devil, he's been able to merge, his weaponry with this AI, man. It's gonna wreak havoc on the civilian population, man. Okay, because as we're finding out, AI has limitations. And it's a lot of things that it's not good at, but there's still particular things that it's really good at, man. And enhancing his sword, okay, against the civilian population, man. The AI, give this man another level of power, okay, and capability, man. Okay. And we know at the top of the list is those, all right, that fear the Lord, and ultimately Jacob in general. Now, 2/3, this is their time of trouble. Okay, but for the 1/3, this is our time, all right, when the Lord's going to show his power. Okay, so let's go on. Let's play this video here. Okay, and these are the things that's going to become normal. Okay, because the devil, he's beginning to speak like a dragon now. He just needs to keep bringing events about, to justify, all right, his reaction. You see?
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Death by firing squad. In its efforts to ramp up and expedite federal executions, the Justice Department announced Friday it's re-implementing lethal injections and authorized the use of firing squads to kill condemned federal prisoners. It's also planning to impose new restrictions on the ability of death row prisoners to seek clemency or pardons, along with a regulation designed to cut years off the federal appeals process for state death penalty cases. 5 states already allow execution by firing squad: Idaho, Mississippi, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Utah. At the Vatican, Pope Leo reiterated the Catholic Church's opposition to capital punishment in a pre-recorded video shared with DePaul University to mark the 15th anniversary of Illinois' abolition of the death penalty.
We affirm that the dignity of the person is not lost even after various serious crimes are committed. Furthermore, effective systems of detention can be and have been developed that protect citizens, while at the same time do not completely deprive those who are guilty of the possibility of redemption. This is why Pope Francis and my recent predecessors repeatedly insisted that the common good can be safeguarded and the requirements of justice can be met without recourse to capital punishment. Consequently, the Church teaches that the death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person.
That video of
And then they got this guy, Pope Leo, you know, as if he's just some righteous resurgent of the Catholic Church. Okay, the Catholic Church shouldn't have any credibility to speak on anything. You know, so they're making, you know, this back and forth with him and Trump. You know, it's all, you know, a stage of confusion. Okay, as long as they can keep you confused, okay, the devils have, all right, the advantage. Okay, that's why Scripture speak about us not being ignorant of Satan's device. But dealing with this character, Pope Leo, okay, which the Catholic Church shouldn't have any credibility, okay, to speak for nothing concerning the Bible, man. Because before Epstein, it was the Catholic priest. Okay, the Catholic priest was getting caught in scandals with little boys, okay, for decades. Nothing was happening, man. Okay, till it became a running joke in America about Catholic priests. Okay, but here it is, they get to stand up and speak, okay, on the global stage, you know, as if there is some type of standard of righteousness, man. Okay, so supposedly the Pope is supposed to be against capital punishment, man. Okay, which we know the scriptures, all right, the Catholic Church is the false prophet, man. Okay, because Islam came out of the Catholic Church and all these different Christian denominations come out of the Catholic Church, man. You know, and you combine Christianity and Islam, all right, well, that's the religion of over half the world. You know, 2.5, 2.6 billion Christians, you know, close to 1.5, you know, billion Muslims. Okay, so you're talking close to 4 billion, okay, people that's a part of these two religions that spring out of the Catholic Church, which is the false prophet, man. Okay, so they pushing this resurgence of this guy Leo as if he's some righteous hero, okay, of the church, man. Okay, it's all a stage. All of them are off, man. All of them are wicked. Okay, but he's making it seem like he's against, you know, the capital punishment. Okay, but let's go on because she's gonna bring someone on.
Pope Leo was.
Yeah, she's gonna bring somebody on that's gonna speak about, you know, the capital punishment that Trump wants to bring, the firing squad, and they say it's for federal prisoners. Okay, and what's considered federal when you're considered what? Terrorists, domestic terrorists, treachery. Okay, which they know. All right, they're gonna want to lump us up in it. Okay, that's why you had this Jake, a black face. Okay, black faces have been, you know, the face of so-called domestics, these staged domestic terrorist events that we've been seeing ever since the war started, man. You know, I'm gonna see if I can pull up some pictures while this play. Let's play this some more.
Sent to DePaul University for a conference on the death penalty. It was Sister Helen Prejean who extended the invitation to the Pope's office for that statement. One of the world's most well-known anti-death penalty advocates and also author of numerous books, including Dead Man Walking, an eyewitness account of the death penalty. A graphic edition of the book was published in November. Sister Helen Prejean is joining us from Chicago, where that conference is taking place at DePaul. Welcome to Democracy Now! In these few minutes, Sister Prejean, can you respond to the Trump administration reinstituting death by firing squad?
Firing squad and the electric chair and gas, anything to get executions going, he has now done. I'm not at all surprised that he's done this. when we look at his record and his way of approaching social problems, his first instinct almost always seems to be demonize someone as an enemy and then kill them and destroy them. And the death penalty writ large is Iran, it's Gaza, and it's solving all the problems by using violence. We have to remember that in his first term, Trump, in the last 6 months of his first term, he designated that 13 people were to be executed. And Bill Barr, his attorney general, went in, gave the orders, and they were. I knew some of them and the lawyers who were trying to save their life. But this, when you look at it, it epitomizes trying to solve social problems, all social problems, by designating an enemy and killing the enemy. And you can see that in Trump's rhetoric about political people he considers enemies. He starts going after anybody even who disagrees with him. And he uses violent language about this is treasonous, they ought to be shot. So it's typical of him. But I also see it in the culture of the Deep South, the ex-slave states that are doing all the executions now. I mean, DeSantis in Florida had last year killed 20 people and has already executed 6 and is lining up more to be killed. But it's when you look at the total sweep in the United States, most states, either in law or in practice, are not executing people. It's but the Deep South still is, and they get the rhetoric from Trump. But I see progress being made. But the whole key, Amy, educate the citizens. I mean, even juries now in Texas, when they know they have the option of a life sentence or death, are not giving out death sentences. But we look at these pockets, and I see the reason for it, as I understand it. It's the way the Supreme Court set up the death penalty in the Gregg decision of 76, when they allowed huge discretionary power to prosecutors and to executives to carry out death or not. And so these decisions for death are left in the hands of individuals. And Trump being president is one of them. And so they're using violence like there's no tomorrow right now. Just hard times.
Sister Helen Prejean.
Because it's the violent man, and that's going back to Isaac. See, that's why, going into wisdom and knowledge shall be the understanding. We know this is Esau, and he's blessed with the sword, and he's going to live by that sword. Okay, so his mind, the way he reasons, okay, is look, the sword, okay, that's the solution. Okay, so you're going to see more, all right, of events that's going to justify, okay, the sword. You see, and when he's able to put, AI with it, this going to take away accountability. Well, they can say, well, the AI, has been following and tracking, this group, this individual, okay, and they was planning this, they was planning it, okay, so we had to send out, all right, a search and destroy, okay. It's going to be, this man plans on bringing his new world order with a lot of blood, man. That's why scriptures say it's going to be the worst time ever. A brother want to post that. Daniel 12:1. Okay. Matthew 24:21. Okay. Let's play a little more of this.
You have the Trump administration announcing plans to add firing squads, electrocution, and gas asphyxiation to its arsenal of methods to execute federal prisoners on death row. It also noted the obstacles to obtaining drugs for lethal injections. In this last minute, what you are calling for now at DePaul in Chicago, where Pope Leo is from.
Yeah. Well, the Pope responded readily to the invitation. We were celebrating the 15th anniversary of Illinois abolishing the death penalty. Governor Pat Quinn, who signed the abolition order into law, was there. So it was to hold up a beacon of light, of hope in the dark times. And so the Pope's very clear. I mean, it was 1,500 years of dialogue in the Catholic Church to reach a position in the catechism of official teaching that no matter how terrible a crime, we can never turn over to governments that absolute power over human life, that they can decide to kill their citizens.
As we continue this conversation, Sister Helen Prejean, I wanted to ask you about the conference you're at DePaul in Chicago. I mean, Chicago is where Pope Leo is from. The message that you played of Pope Leo opposing the death penalty came out almost concurrent with the Trump administration announcement expanding the methods to carry out federal executions. President Biden had put a moratorium on federal executions. Can you talk about the significance of this?
And then you had about Trump, bringing back the guillotine. So Nero is gearing up to do what Nero do, what Nero does, okay? Because you go into the history, Nero was, very cruel, towards the believers. Now, real quick, Elder Yahshua Wamba did a news and prophecy the other day, and I want to play this because this is the narrative that these devils are getting ready to strike up. Now, this was from, I think about 2 years ago, okay, with this whole black identity extremists, okay? And then we're going to show you, all right, the pattern of this year, what these devils have been doing. Now, let's play this.
Bass, or Karen Bass, I believe she's out of California. Some years ago, she was getting at this Edomite who, at the time where the FBI was doing reports on what is called black identity extremist, right?
Between 1956 and 1971, the FBI ran a counterintelligence program named COINTELPRO that was initiated by J. Edgar Hoover. COINTELPRO mainly targeted civil rights leaders such as Martin Luther King, and it's commonly understood that this was an abuse of its surveillance power in a manner to suppress a peaceful movement. So I would like to ask Mr. Chair unanimous consent to enter this report into the record, which is black identity extremists likely motivated to target law enforcement officers.
Right, black identity extremists. I mean, what the hell does that mean? Okay, you're extreme about your identity. And what group of people on the planet Earth uses their racial, superiority and God complex to harm others and ethnically cleanse? That's you Edomites. And we're witnessing that what the small hats are doing to the so-called Palestinians right now. What they've done in South Africa, what you did over here in America. Christians and people, who call themselves JOOs, right, are at the forefront of having an identity extreme, and do extreme things to others. All right. But what's getting ready to happen and what they've been doing over the years is wiggling Jacob in there. Okay. As a black identity extremist.
I believe earlier you said you were not familiar with the report. Is that correct?
Well, I haven't read it. I know some of the alleged targeting of officers.
Look at this.
Okay, so I would like to know, and I'll ask you about that in a minute. So you are somewhat familiar with it. Who had the power in your department to order a report like this?
I'm not sure how that report got ordered. I don't believe I explicitly approved it or directed it.
Okay, so you haven't necessarily read the report, but you are familiar with the term black identity extremists?
Well, I think so, yes.
So can you tell me what that term means to you? Do you believe that there is a movement of African Americans that identify themselves as black identity extremists, and what does that movement do?
Well, I'd be interesting to see the conclusions of that report, but I'm aware that there are groups that do have an extraordinary commitment to their racial identity, and some have transformed themselves even into violent activists.
Are you aware of white organizations that do?
So you see that? Okay, you listen to them. You listen to these devils, man. They telegraph what they got up their sleeve, man. Okay, so he's saying that there's, Jake, okay, so-called black, Okay, so-called black men who have become extreme about their identity, man. Okay, and who you think he's gonna link? Who you think they're gonna link that to? Okay, and then it says some of them have become militant. Remember, you got ISUPK doing interviews with, his members, all right, with their members training, doing martial arts training in the background. Okay, you got an interview with these podcasters, okay, of the world. Okay, while you having men train, while you doing the interview in the background. Okay, doing push-ups and putting this, which is nothing wrong with training, but when you put that on camera in the ministry, you put fringes on it, okay, and what is it? We're going to see when this devil really, when the Lord put the spirit on this devil to push his propaganda. All right, you're going to see that all this, poor decision making by these Israelite camps. Okay, these guys that have sold out. All right, Esau, he's going to run all that together, man. Okay, when this devil really, okay, goes to make his play, because he's careful how he deals with the prophets. Okay, but the Lord gonna put the spirit on him, to go with his move. Okay, but yeah, this whole thing of black identity extremists. Okay, we haven't heard the last of that, man. The devil gonna make a push because when you go here, when you look at okay, let's just go here. Now you had the Jake that supposedly shot in Houston. Okay, what does it say? Property of Allah. Okay, look at the pictures. All right, or Jake in the hoodie that said property of Allah. Okay, just conveniently, soon as the war with Iran starts. Okay, a week later, you have this in Texas. Okay, wearing property of Allah shirt. Which Iran, what are they? They Shia Muslims. Okay, so you have this, and this is all this year. Okay, so you have that. Then you go, all right, a week or two later, a few days later. Okay, you had this shooting at a college, Old Dominion. Okay, Jake's supposed to be with ISIS. All right, look, here it is. Okay, 36-year-old Jake. Okay, now he's a part of ISIS. All right, well, there's another Islamic terrorist group, jihad terrorist group. Okay, Old Dominion gunmen linked to ISIS. Okay, so now niggas are jihadists now. Okay, so you had that, and this is all this year, and then the most recent, all right, which we all know, when you go here, all right, the most recent, we'll go to the White House shoot. Okay, you see, all right, Jake. Okay, so all these black faces are becoming the face of domestic terrorism, man. Okay, and these things are going to increase. Okay, to justify him being a madman, sparing none. Okay, and he's setting the target, like the woman said. What they do, okay, is that they select the enemy. Okay, they push propaganda, then they go search and destroy. Okay, the same thing that we see in Gaza, okay, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, okay, in Libya. All right, they're finna bring it here to America and mainly towards Jake. Okay, the tribes, man. Okay, because they're targeted the prophets, man. They're just going a roundabout way to do it. Okay, so this is let's go from there. Let's get these two. So now I want to go here because what these devils want to set up is a complete surveillance state. All right, so I'm gonna pull up this video, get some of these precepts as well. Okay, yeah, let's go here. And all they have to do is flip the switch, but they have the infrastructure, okay, and the devices in place, they can flip the switch. They already surveilling, and you merge with that, you get that device, okay, they just links you to all these devices, man. You put that device in you, it just links you to these existing devices, all right, that they already have for surveillance, you know. So let's go here. This the brother servants of Yahushua. All right, Daniel 12:1. It says, at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation. Okay. It says, even to that same time, all right, at that it says, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found in the book of life, man. So we're at this time, you know, because we're in the time of deliverance. So the time of deliverance, okay, what are we going to be delivered from? This madman sparing none. Okay, we're coming into that time, and we're going to need help from the heavens, man. Michael, you know, he's just symbolic for help from the heavens, man. Because we know the ultimate savior is going to be Yahweh Shai. Okay, but leading up until the second coming of Yahweh Shai, man, the Lord, as the scriptures say, his angels shall have charge over thee. Okay, there's going to be miracles, there's going to be divine intervention. Okay, like is the Lord, all right, he's going to show his power. Okay, he's setting the atmosphere to show his power. So as he said, Esau was to be a madman sparing none. Well, the Lord is setting the stage to show his power as well. Okay, and we know his power is going to far overwhelm the power of Esau Edom. Okay, so let's go from there. So let's play this, you know, because like I say, this surveillance state is just the flip of a switch, you know. And when this guy said this, to play a few of the first about 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes of this one, you know, because he's going to say something that inspired this lesson. So let's play this.
The Eyes of Texas used to be a popular folk tune, but today the song could be about other eyes, the eyes of a spy machine. We live in the United States of surveillance, with cameras like these increasingly positioned on street corners and with much more invisible online and on the phone. Anyone who's paying attention knows that privacy could be out the window. That's what former newspaper editor Bill Kovach says.
I think the idea of privacy is gone. I think you have to adjust to the fact that somebody somewhere may be watching what you're doing. It may be General Motors, it may be General Telephone and Telegraph, it may be the drugstore on the corner.
You're one sentence away from launching your website with Base 44. Since the beginning of the internet, there's never been such a fun, fast.
All of this is not happening by accident. Well-funded, powerful agencies and companies are engaged in the business of keeping tabs on what we do, what we say, and what we think. Mass surveillance is the focus of this new 6-part investigative documentary series, examining who is watching whom and why. Some Americans are up in arms, including an internet entrepreneur who says government spying could be a first step towards a police state. Alfredo Lopez.
Let me put it this way. There is in the United States all the technology, from drones to computers to surveillance to day-to-day camera surveillance all over the country. There is a structure and apparatus for a police state. The United States is not a police state. That is clear. We are not that. There I draw the line. But we can be. And we can be with a flip of a switch. And the real problem is...
He said we can be at the flip of a switch. Okay? And we know that these events that they're, that they're going to bring about, these staged events, these false flags, they're going to flip their switch, So they're going to continue to cause these events to happen. Okay, so they can do what? Flip their switch. Okay, which they're already doing, and it's just going to be official. Okay, when they cause these certain events to happen, they're justified, man. Okay, so let's go here to show you also too that these other nations, okay, along with America, all right, are already in this phase of surveillance, man. Okay, well, you know, China being the head, you see? So let's play this. And then we're going to go into the software that was created to govern and run the surveillance, okay, and the digital, all right, slavery and the enforcement of the New World Order. Okay, so let's play this.
Since the start of the second Trump administration, many people have wondered whether the US is becoming a surveillance state. But is there any truth to that? Today we'll dig in. This is Incognito Mode.
What I think about is a state where the government's tracking or recording of people living in the state keeps them from doing things, chills their speech. To me, that's what a surveillance state is.
I think about this idea of a panopticon where perhaps the government isn't watching everything that everyone's doing, but there's always the potential that you could be watched and you feel watched all the time because you never know if they're watching. And therefore, you have no fundamental sense of privacy. To me, a surveillance state is a society where the government is fundamentally hostile to privacy.
I would agree with both of those definitions. I guess for me, it's a state that has both the capabilities to surveil everyone on a mass scale and the political will to do so. And that results in impacting people's lives in meaningful ways. According to Privacy International, a surveillance state has a number of specific characteristics. This includes mass surveillance of residents, avoidance of democratic oversight, surveillance of threats to the state and of threats to the surveillance apparatus itself, operates in secrecy, and vilifies those who protest or resist the surveillance, compels the private sector to share data on people with the government, or even sells data on people to the private sector, uses surveillance as a solution to social problems, and uses its surveillance powers beyond their original justification for them. Why would a state want to impose so much surveillance on its citizens? It seems like it's creating a lot of work and spending a lot of money to do something that might not have a lot of benefits to anyone.
I think that, a surveillance state preserves the status quo and makes the powerful more powerful. That's what dictators want. That's what the elites always want in any country, including the US, which I think is why we're asking this question today of whether the US is one of these surveillance states now too.
Perhaps the three most common examples are China, North Korea, and Russia. China has built the most technologically advanced and expansive surveillance apparatus on Earth. The country has roughly 700 million cameras. Many are equipped with facial recognition, as well as a system called CityBrain, which uses AI and data collection for so-called urban management. The system fuses information from public cameras, cell phones, financial transactions, and even health and e-commerce information to track citizens in real time. The system was developed by Alibaba Group, and that's just talking about cameras. China's government developed the internet and all types of telecommunications to be centralized in a way that it can surveil pretty much everything everyone does online or over the phone at any time.
China has been developing a digital surveillance state for decades. That's sort of been a hallmark initiative of their regime, is the Great Firewall. Their model was to build that into all their digital technology, all the infrastructure of the telecoms, everything from the ground up.
The amount of internet censorship in China is widespread and really obvious. Popular social media sites are banned in China. Instead, you have to use social media developed domestically in China, which the government has a massive amount of control over. A lot of this might sound similar to what's happening in the US or other Western countries. But the reason people call China a surveillance state is because its systems were developed with surveillance in mind from the very beginning. Just as the open internet was developing across the world, China was building an alternative version that had tight centralized control that really imposed a lot of limits on what people could say and do online.
And then there's a true totalitarian state like North Korea, which I think of as the quintessential surveillance state that actually is not digital at all for most people. Most people don't even have access to the internet. Those who do, it's completely, entirely surveilled. Those are mostly elites and government employees. But then for everyone else, there's a kind of analog surveillance state through informants, through a whisper network of neighbors snitching on each other and being incentivized to do so that there really is no privacy, or at least that is the intention of the regime of.
Famous names adorn this trophy.
Of Kim Jong-un.
In North Korea, surveillance enforces loyalty, and dissent there can mean imprisonment. Virtually all aspects of life are under surveillance in North Korea. Classrooms, workplaces, roads, even homes are subject to surveillance. It's been reported that as many as 1 in 20 North Koreans participate in the surveillance network, making privacy virtually non-existent. In Russia, the surveillance state is really geared toward shutting down dissent, so much so that human rights advocates call this a cyber gulag. Authorities scan the internet every day to find photos and videos showing banned content. They use cameras equipped with facial recognition to identify and track protesters. Online censorship has expanded drastically, with hundreds of thousands of web pages blocked annually.
Russia is more of an example of trying to retrofit and come to that digital surveillance later and invest the time and the energy retroactively. But what's interesting to me now is that I think digital technology has potentially evolved to the point where that is an even lighter lift than ever for a state because of the private sector capabilities that are already in place.
Yeah, I mean, you see this in just kind of the nature of the internet where things are so centralized now. We have so much internet traffic that goes through Silicon Valley companies, the cloud giants like Amazon and Google. Retrofitting the surveillance is relatively easy compared to how it might have been in the earlier days of the internet where everything was much more decentralized. So there are a lot of elements.
Yeah, so you see, the earth, is being, the whole globe is being prepped to go digital, for the devil to hit that switch. Okay. And like I say, so we're going to just keep seeing event after event to justify, the devil bringing on full surveillance. Okay. Now they talked about, the digital technology that's available now, that makes it much easier for them, to surveil, all right, the masses, man. And I put this in the, you can watch the rest of this. I'm gonna segue to another, got one more video I want to get into. So let's go here. Because what's going to be the system that's going to run, all right, this surveillance system that's going to run, all right, the banking that's going to run, all right. Let me see. Yep. What's going to be the system? Okay, well, it's Palantir. All right, so they're gonna explain Palantir from 9/11 until now, which what we have to understand, Palantir was never a private corporation. Okay, they pushed this narrative like it was a private corporation that's getting these government contracts. No, it's just a government entity. All right, it comes from DARPA. Okay, which DARPA is the branch of the government responsible, okay, for what they call, high tech, development and research, okay, dealing with high tech. Matter of fact, let me pull it up real quick. Dealing with DARPA, all right. All this technology comes from DARPA, okay. So let's get this real quick in DARPA, and then we'll go into this video. But everything you see on Amazon, all right, SpaceX, okay, Tesla, okay, the Ring cameras, cell phones, okay, all this is technology that comes out of DARPA, Palantir, okay. This is all DARPA technology, and they push the narrative as if these things are, privately developed, by, private corporations. No, but they just create these shell companies. All right, they create these characters with these stories, there's Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Sam Altman and Peter Thiel and these particular men, okay, is the mascot of these of this technology. But ultimately it all goes back to DARPA. Okay, so DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. Okay, so you have Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. And they always push this word defense, but they're on the offensive. What they're defending against. Okay? But Esau is not on the defense with anything. He's on the offensive, man. Okay? But they push this word defense as if, these things are for defensive. They're defending against something. That's why they always create these boogeymen that they're defending the world from. Okay, that justifies the incorporation of this technology, man. But it was always a Trojan horse, to set up and to usher in, all right, this digital infrastructure for digital slavery, man. Okay, so DARPA is a U.S. Department of Defense agency tasked with researching and developing breakthrough technologies for national security. Okay, created in 1958, and guess what? Guess whose grandfather, was a part of this? All right, Jeff Bezos. Okay, one of the original, founders of DARPA. Okay, was the grandfather of Jeff Bezos, man. Okay, so these men that we see that are billionaires, they are part of particular families. Okay, they're part of particular circles. You see, that's all for this technocracy and control system. It says created in 1958. It focuses on high risk, high reward projects to create, all right, or prevent technological surprises, responsible for innovation like the internet, GPS, mRNA juice. You see, the DARPA came up with the juice. Okay, the juice that everyone just came, that they just put out there, it comes from DARPA. Okay, there was a military operation. That pandemic was a military operation, man. Okay, this is the elites at war with the world, with the citizens of the world, especially here in America, man. Okay, these are all military operations, man. GPS, these things ain't to benefit you, it's to track you, it's to imprison you. Okay, so they've been building this digital infrastructure, for a while, and now we're at the time where they want to hit that switch, and close that trap. All right, and that's going to be that C hook, because that makes you a perpetual part, of this digital network, man. Okay, so let's play this. It's pretty interesting. He's going to go from 9/11 until now, dealing with Palantir. So let's play this.
Born from the ashes of 9/11 and funded by the CIA, one company built an AI to see everything and everyone. It tracks wars, borders, pandemics, and profits. Governments use it. Corporations depend on it. And most people don't even know it exists. This is Palantir, the most dangerous AI company in the world. September 11th, 2001. 4 planes, 2 towers, 3,000 lives lost, and one question burned into every intelligence report for the next decade. How the hell did we not see it coming?
And it was all a hoax. Okay. It was a real event. Okay. But it was planned. Okay. It was a planned event. There's no way that everybody missed it. But see, this justified them, being able to take surveillance to another level with the Patriot Act. Okay. So in order for them to bring about certain, decrees and legislation that they want to bring, well, they need an event to justify it. Okay. So they already had this technology. It was like, okay, what event? Because the event does, and the event does more than one thing. But one of the things that this event does, that it allowed them to do is to, incorporate this technology into the surveillance. Okay. It allowed them to enhance their surveillance of everyday citizens under the guise of tracking terrorism. Okay, and they've been running with that narrative ever since. Okay, they started wars based on what? Okay, we're fighting terrorism. Okay, Iran, they the biggest funder of terrorism. You see, they run with that same narrative, man. They run it to the ground. Okay, So this whole, 9/11, this was, all right, a planned event. Okay, but then they play dumb, like, damn, how did this happen? Damn, how we let this happen? Okay. So they can justify bringing about what they want to bring about. So let's play this.
The US had all the data. Multiple agencies had pieces of the puzzle, but no one connected the dots. There was no single pane of glass. So Silicon Valley stepped in with an idea. What if we built software that could? Something that could sift through oceans of emails, surveillance footage, passport records, satellite images, and bank transfers, and find the next Osama before he booked a plane ticket. Enter Peter Thiel, the PayPal co-founder and libertarian philosopher in residence, who had just made millions by stopping credit card fraud with algorithms. Now he had a new idea. Use those same tools to stop terrorists. If anti-fraud tools can detect a stolen credit card, why can't we build tools to detect a stolen airplane? He called it Palantir, named after the all-seeing orbs in Lord of the Rings. A fitting name for a company obsessed with visibility and secrecy. Palantir started like a Bond villain's tech startup. Small team, secretive office. Their first investor? Not Sequoia, not Andreessen Horowitz. It was In-Q-Tel, the CIA's very own venture capital firm. Yes, the CIA has a VC arm. And no, you're not supposed to know that. The goal? Build a platform that could do what no human analyst ever could. Spot threats hiding in plain sight. Blend messy, siloed government data, passport logs, drone footage, field reports, into one God view. Easier said than done. Early Palantir was buggy, over-engineered. One official described using it like trying to fly a space shuttle just to find your car keys. Agencies resisted. Bureaucrats balked. The NSA thought it was cute. The FBI thought it was terrifying. But behind the scenes, the company kept building. Quietly, patiently, almost obsessively.
Smart founders know something most people miss. Get your domain name even if you're not ready to launch your business. With
They weren't chasing profit. They were chasing belief. The belief that software could prevent another 9/11. As Palantir grew, so did the myth. Inside the office, everything screamed, "We are not like other tech companies." No press allowed. Clients anonymized. Engineers were sworn to silence. If Google was a theme park, Palantir was a bunker. At the center of it all was Alex Karp, a philosophy PhD, wild hair, wireframe glasses. Looked like he wandered in from a Nietzsche book club. Thiel was the strategist. Karp was the monk. He'd lecture employees on the ethics of power. We're not in the business of surveillance. We're in the business of understanding. That sounded better on stage than in practice, because Palantir didn't sell software. They sold certainty, the promise that somewhere in the noise was the truth. And only they had the tools to find it. It started with counterterrorism, but as we'll see, it didn't stop there. 2007, Iraq, Afghanistan. The US military was knee-deep in 2 wars and 10,000 spreadsheets. Intel reports were everywhere. IEDs were exploding daily, and commanders were drowning in dots with no way to connect them. Enter Palantir. Its software, codenamed Gotham, stitched together bomb data, insurgent networks, cell phone logs, satellite maps, all in one interface that actually worked. You could literally see the whole kill chain, and it looked like Google Maps. Special forces loved it. Analysts swore by it. Generals started requesting it. The Department of Defense took note. Palantir didn't just show you who planted the bomb. It showed you who bought the phone, who sent the money, who met with whom, when, and where. Now, Palantir built this technology to find enemies of the state. But the terrifying reality is, you don't need to be a target of the CIA for your data to be mapped, tracked, and sold. Right now, thousands of data brokers are collecting and trading your personal information, your full name, home address, and financial history without you ever knowing about it. And that is why today's video is sponsored by Incogni. This isn't just about spam. It's about safety. Scammers use this data for identity theft, and stalkers can literally buy your address to find where you and your family sleep. Scrubbing this data yourself takes years. Incogni does it automatically. You can see on my dashboard right now. They are actively forcing brokers to delete my profiles. They also just launched a massive new tool, the custom removal feature, on their unlimited and family plans. If you find your info exposed on a specific people search site, you don't have to wait. You just paste the URL, and Incogni's privacy agents will take care of the rest. They can't harm you if they can't find you. So, take your personal data off the...
And that ain't gonna work, you know? It ain't gonna work, man. I'm trying to skip past this. Okay. They got all that. Okay. You can't encrypt yourself. Okay. They just trying to sell something, but nah, man, that ain't gonna work. So let's go back to the business.
It was mandated, but because it might actually save their lives. But in Washington, if you're not invited to the table, you're probably on the menu. And Palantir was not invited.
And see, this is a narrative they try to push as if Palantir had to fight their way, you know, into being to getting these contracts from America. All right, this is a narrative, man, that they push, okay, because it was a government, all right, project all along, okay, but they pushed this narrative of this private company, you know, these small room of technicians, you know, built this global network, this global interface that combines all right, of the world's data, okay, into one system, okay, knowing damn well, okay, that these little geeks in the room, the Geek Squad, they presented like it was the Geek Squad, okay, in the basement, and they just had access to all the world's data, okay, and came up with this network, this global network. They had access to all the American satellites, okay, to come up with this global network. Nah, man, it was the government the whole time, but they pushed this narrative as if this was this private business, you know, they had to fight its way and, you know, had to sue the government, as you're going to go get into in a minute, you know, to get a seat at the table. No, it was always a government project, man, okay? And they've been using it in wars for decades, okay? They played a part in them, you know, finding particular people, you know, and this is how they was able, even with Trump, when they killed Soleimani, Palantir, okay, and went back in 2020 when they killed General Soleimani. All this is Palantir. When they're able to find these men, you know, these particular men, these high profile men, okay, over there in what they call the Middle East, which is Western Asia. Well, Palantir plays a major part in it. These Iranian scientists, okay, you have this operation called Operation Deadly Home in Gaza, dealing with Palantir. All right, you know, you can look that up. Okay, so let's play this though. But they push that narrative as Palantir had to fight his way at the table. Nah, man, it was a government project the whole time. Okay.
While soldiers were praising it on the ground, back in DC, things got ugly. Who the hell are these guys? No contracts, no clearance, no golf retreats. They're not in the club. Palantir had no lobbyists, no revolving door hires, no steak dinners with procurement officers. When the Army tried to award a $200 million intel contract to a legacy contractor, no competition, Palantir did the unthinkable. They sued. Yes, a Silicon Valley startup sued the US Army and won. A federal judge ruled that the Army had broken the law by refusing to even consider Palantir's software, even though soldiers were already using it in the field. The message was clear. Innovation wasn't optional anymore, but neither was controversy. By now, Palantir had proven itself in war zones. So the question became, what else could it do? Turns out, a lot. Immigration and Customs Enforcement signed on. The Department of Homeland Security followed. Soon, Palantir was being used not to fight terrorists abroad, but to track people at home. Software that once helped stop IEDs was now identifying undocumented workers, mapping social networks, predicting threat levels. This guy's cousin rented a truck near a known safe house, suggesting he may be a courier. Recommend detention. Translation: his cousin drives a Honda. Pick him up. Civil rights groups were alarmed. Immigrant communities felt surveilled. And inside Palantir, some employees started asking, Is this what we signed up for? Internal letters leaked. Protests bubbled. One engineer resigned, saying, "I wanted to stop terrorists, not deport families." But outside the office, contracts kept coming. More agencies, more money. The mission had expanded and blurred. Palantir was no longer just a counterterrorism company. It had become something else. A surveillance platform, a battlefield algorithm, a state-sponsored crystal ball, and it was just getting warmed up.
It's just like a very cool way to prototype extremely quickly. If I go here in Figma, I just have this design here that I pulled together.
By the late 2010s, Palantir had conquered war zones, outfoxed the Pentagon, and racked up contracts with nearly every three-letter agency. But there was one battlefield still untouched: corporate America. Not because Palantir didn't want in, but because, for years, they claimed they were above it. We don't mine user data like big tech. We build software for governments that saves lives. And that was true. Until they realized governments move slow. CEOs sign checks fast.
And it was never about saving lives. Okay? Like I say, it's informative, but then it's watered down as well. You know, it's informative of how Palantir has been integrated into society. And it's the backbone of this surveillance. Okay, it's gonna be the backbone of the social credit system. Okay, it's gonna be the backbone of search and destroy. Okay, and say you violate something within, New World Order policy that's worthy of death. Well, it's gonna be Palantir that's gonna track you down. Okay, and be the executioner, man. Okay, it was never about saving lives. It was always about control. And they're gonna say it towards the end. All right, all of them are demons: Peter Thiel, Alex Karp. Okay, it was never about tracking terrorists. Okay, because a lot of those guys that they track, they set them guys up, man. They set up Saddam. They set up Bin Laden. Okay, a lot of these guys that they parade around as a trophy, okay, of the American military, they set those guys up, man. Okay.
Therefore, enter the pivot. Palantir launched a new product, Foundry, basically Gotham's friendlier, cleaner cousin. Still powerful, still scary, just now in a buttoned-up suit instead of combat boots. Foundry integrates all your enterprise data, then tells you how to fire Dave from logistics. Suddenly, everyone wanted in. Oil giants used it to optimize drilling. Pharma companies used it for clinical trial pipelines. Hedge funds used it to predict markets before your Bloomberg terminal could blink. We used to make decisions with intuition. Now I make them with this magic rectangle. Within a few years, Palantir had quietly become a digital consigliere for Fortune 500s, helping them make decisions faster, leaner, and often without understanding how. See, Palantir doesn't just show you dashboards. It doesn't just give you options. It tells you what to do. Shut down Plant 3, reroute shipments, increase stockpile in Region 7. But what if I said Plant 3. During COVID-19, it was everywhere. The US government used it to track outbreaks, distribute vaccines, manage supply chains. Hospitals used it, airlines used it. Even the British government used it to forecast where the next PPE shortage would hit. And here's where it gets weird. No one outside Palantir really understands how the system works. Not fully. It's not a spreadsheet. It's a black box with influence. And not everyone was happy. We gave an unaccountable private company power over national logistics and critical healthcare decisions during a pandemic because their interface looked cool. But Foundry.
So each event, okay, Palantir got more and more power and it was more incorporated. So from 9/11, it was incorporated for surveillance. And then you fast forward to the pandemic, it was incorporated for the logistics, the supply chains, okay, and also with healthcare. Okay, so each event, each stage, planned event, all right, Palantir becomes more and more embedded into day-to-day life. Okay, so what these devils doing now in this war, okay, and also in certain events, stage events that they're going to bring about, you're going to see Palantir become, because their digital ID, okay, is going to be an extension of what? Palantir. Okay, your digital. That's why ICE has this software, Palantir software, where they can hold a camera to your face. Okay, and they can get all your data just off facial recognition. Okay, so that digital ID, okay, is going to be attached to what? It's going to link you to what? All right, it's going to fully, onboard you to what? Palantir. Okay. So, well, these events that we see happening, it's going to be Palantir that's going to swoop in and consolidate, all right, more control. Okay.
You didn't care because it got results. And in the corporate world, results get you paid. By 2020, Palantir had gone from Tolkien-themed startup to government contractor to multinational enterprise consigliere. And now it was finally time to go public. Palantir's long-awaited IPO. Wait, what the hell is that? A direct listing? That's right. No roadshow, no big pitch, just a quiet, hey, we're tradable now, and a surprise Dumbledore-style appearance on the New York Stock Exchange. And when the numbers came out, investors were confused. Palantir was unprofitable. Growth was slow, margins were weird. Yet somehow, everyone still wanted in. Why? Because it's not just a tech company. It's Palantir. They weren't buying software. They were buying the mythology, the secrecy, the mission, the edge. To some, Palantir wasn't just a company. It was the operating system of power. And they wanted a piece.
Base 44 super agents. Careful, there's no going back. No setup. Just say hello.
By the 2020s, Palantir wasn't just a company. It was infrastructure. Behind military briefings, behind NATO dashboards, behind closed-door intelligence reports. Need to track tanks in Ukraine and simulate war outcomes in real time? Ask Gotham. Looking for a digital war room that speaks 5 languages and updates faster than CNN? Congratulations, you've just licensed Palantir. They weren't just helping the military anymore. They were the military's mind. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Palantir was there. Not with boots, not with bombs, with data. Helping Ukraine map Russian supply lines, optimize artillery, and predict drone strikes. They branded it AI for warfighting. Cool name, terrifying product. Suddenly, battlefield intelligence wasn't just satellite photos. It was algorithms whispering, aim here. But with great power comes terrible press. Privacy advocates were furious. Civil liberty groups called Palantir a war profiteer in software form. One critic nicknamed it the Oracle of Orwell. Why? Because Palantir's tech wasn't just helping generals. It was helping police departments forecast crime, helping border agents identify suspects, helping governments decide who to monitor and who to trust. And none of it was transparent. Activists raised alarms about racial profiling, predictive policing, and algorithmic discrimination. They asked, what happens when a flawed dataset becomes a digital warrant? We save lives. Period. Also, we're not responsible for how our clients use the product. We just built the hammer. If someone uses it to hang a picture or break into a neighbor's house, that's not on us. Have a nice day. Internally, Palantir insisted they were the moral tech company, that they refused to work with China, that they drew the line at authoritarian regimes. But the line between defense and domination, it was getting blurrier by the day. Palantir had built the world's most advanced data fusion engine, so naturally the next step was to stop predicting war and start predicting everything. Palantir moved into AI decision-making. They called it Meta Constellation because Skynet was taken. Want to simulate economic collapse, disease outbreaks, civil unrest? Foundry could do that now, and not just react to the future. It could suggest how to shape it. Governments quietly began using it for long-term planning. Corporations ran it on their entire supply chains. Palantir began calling itself the operating system for the modern enterprise, and possibly the modern state. But here's the real question. When a single company knows more than your cabinet, your generals, and your central bank, who exactly is in charge? Because for all its secrecy, one thing about Palantir is clear. It was never just about software. It was about power. The kind that's invisible, unaccountable, and always watching. It began with a promise to stop the next 9/11, a tool to protect, not to rule. But over time, the mission blurred, and now it helps shape the world it once tried to defend.
There you go. And it was never about defending the world. It was always about power. Okay. But it had to cause certain events to justify, implement, this technology into the day to day. Okay. So Palantir is going to be that system. It is the system. Okay. That's going to be the brains, okay, of the devil's new world order. All right. The all seeing eye. Okay, this is him trying to sit in the seat of the Most High with this Palantir technology, man. Okay, these data centers, these data centers ain't for, all right, the chat GPT questions, and you see they push it like these data centers are for, people that subscribe to Grok and people that subscribe to, the open AI and these different, base 44 and these different AI, all right, softwares. But really these data centers are for Palantir. Okay, because in the new world order, ain't gonna be all that ain't gonna be all that just using data willy-nilly, for recreational uses. No, that data is going to be used. They plan on the data, okay, and the energy that it takes to run these data centers. They plan that on being used for a control system. Okay, so this whole thing of AI making your life easier. No, AI was built for control. That's what AI was built for. Okay, but they're reeling people into this trap. Okay, with the convenience, and the promise of productivity of AI. The promise of the enhancement of AI. Okay, well, they're not telling you that no, this is all slavery. This is digital slavery, man. Okay, so let's go here real quick to the book of Psalms. We always get, I believe it's Psalms 124. Okay, and this Psalms of everything. When you go to Psalms 124 and 1, it said, if it had not been for the Lord who was on our side, now may Israel say. And right now this is speaking of the elect of Israel. Okay, if it had not been for the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Shah, who was on our side when men rose up against us, man. So we know, all right, that the devil, he has, wickedness on his mind. He has violence on his mind against the tribes, especially those that believe. Okay, but if it had not been for the Lord, if our power went on our side, we'd be out of there, man. But our power is with us in these days, man. Our power is going to show himself, as Esau is, showcasing his power to the world, where the Lord going to showcase his power to the world. And it's going to be on a whole nother level. Psalms 124 and 3 said, then they had swallowed us up quick when their wrath is kindled against us. Then the waters had overwhelmed us. The stream had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. Okay, so this is Esau eating the proud waters, man. And he's going to try to come with overwhelming force, man. And this devil, his weaponry with his AI, okay, his technology, his surveillance. You see, in his mind, we're prey. Okay, the way Esau looks at us, man, is a prey. You see, he said, blessed be the Lord who have not given us as a prey to their teeth, man. But the Lord not going to allow us to be a prey to the devil, man. Okay, there's going to be a standard lifted. Even those that have to, be martyrs. Okay, that's not going to be the end all be all of the story, man. That's a part of prophecy, man. Okay, but the what's above, those that are martyrs is the standard being lifted. Okay, and above that standard is Yahweh Shai returning, man. Okay, that's when you get to verse 7. Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. Okay, and the snare is this system, man, this new world order system, this digital enslavement. Okay, but it said our soul is escaped as a bird. Okay, what do birds do to escape? They fly away. Okay, and that's us going into those chariots at the return of Yahushua. And what is Yahushua going to do? The snare is broken and we are escaped. Yahushua is going to break this whole system, man. Okay, all this digital infrastructure, this is going to be destroyed, man. The nukes and the chariots are going to do, all right, are going to obliterate, you know, they're going to obliterate these data centers and all this going to be destroyed, man. Okay, all these cameras, and you see, it says our help is in the name of the Lord Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai, who made heaven, all right, and earth. You see, he is. Okay, so through the midst of all this, man, the Lord is getting ready to show that he is. Okay, but we see what this devil, you know, is moving towards, man. Okay, so prepare for more events so he can justify, you know, implement more of this technology, man. Okay, because this is going to be let me see, this is going to be the foundation of his new world order, man. That damn Palantir. So Lord will, you know, you brothers, all right, and you few sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakapadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers, and peace and blessing salutations to the hopeful Shalom.